All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning, one and all, and welcome to another edition of Visionaries and Truthtellers. I am the host, producer, and the madman who came up with this idea to talk to really wonderful people all over the world who are doing great things for the planet and humanity. As you all know, I am always stalking, but in a good way, good people on Twitter to come join us and have a conversation. This young man coming up next, I think he's younger than me. I'm gonna refer to him as a young man. So I found him 2 weeks ago. I just happened to respond to something somebody put on Twitter. He asked me to join a group that he's going to talk about, Fin Noir, I think that's the name of it. A Twitter chat on Monday, and we kind of went on from there. So it can happen, folks. There's some good to be found online. So without further ado, I give you, is it Rahkim Sabree? Sabree.
Yes, sir.
Okay, take it away.
Yeah, so my name is
Welcome.
Rahkim. I'm an author, speaker, financial coach, and I create content for Black people around financial empowerment and financial trauma.
Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about this in a minute. I'll make sure everybody can see that. So when you hit the New York Times bestseller list, I expect a shout out, but we'll move on. We'll come back to that. So talk to us. So define, I heard it on the call when you were on the Twitter space a couple of weeks ago, and I had never heard that term, which is why I was really fascinated to talk with you. So talk to us a little bit about the definition of financial trauma and what that looks like so people can
Yeah,
understand what it is and maybe they're in it or know somebody who's in it.
so it's a term that is rising in popularity, and there are a lot of different definitions out there for financial trauma. But I define it as any instance observed or experienced that has a negative impact on the way you view, interact with, or believe about money. So there's a spectrum that exists there, right? It can be something small like receiving bad financial advice, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be something that impacts, your lifestyle, right? It can be an eviction, it could be a repossession, it could be getting laid off or getting fired. And so I think the space that I like to focus on is how does that instance of trauma influence behavior beyond that point? Oftentimes, people will use that trauma as fuel to propel themselves forward financially. Other times, people will use it as kind of an obstacle or roadblock. So
Mm-hmm.
that it's like touching a hot stove, right? It's like, I don't want to do that again. I got burnt. And so, my job, my goal when I talk about financial trauma, especially through the lens of the Black experience, is to give language to what this experience is, um, and taking into account too cultural competence and the history of Black Americans. So, what does the impact of slavery look like on today's Black person? What does the impact of Jim Crow, redlining, all of the barred access to financial tools, products, services, and how has that shaped our behaviors, our beliefs, our interactions with money today? And so when you hear people talk about financial trauma today, they do it often from kind of like a detached, very generalized perspective, as is the case in most instances related to personal finance. But I find that I've carved out kind of a niche audience in talking about the experience of Black people and how they interact with their money, what that trauma looks like, what my own traumas have been in the world of personal finance, and the steps that I've taken to overcome it.
Okay. Let's jump right in. There's a couple of things I want to come back to when we have to have you on at a later date. Let me ask you this: what's your earliest memory of money?
Um, Man, good question. I don't know that I could necessarily pinpoint my earliest memory of money,
Hmm.
but I tell you I became conscious of maybe a negative interaction with money probably in my early teens.
Okay.
My my parents were young parents. They had separated, and so I started to take a more active role in the administration of the household. And with that, I started to kind of reflect on things that I had experienced or did not get the chance to experience because of issues of money. So maybe that was not being able to have, the same name brand clothes that my peers did, or not being able to take advantage of scholastic activities like the book fairs, or getting tutoring for instruments that I played, or being enrolled in maybe athletic programs. And so all of those things started to kind of like turn in my head, and I became conscious of the fact that we didn't have as much as maybe some people did, but we had more than other people did. And I think as time has gone on, and I became an independent adult, those experiences certainly have shaped what my outlook on personal finance was, what I believe was possible for me, what I believe was for me, like what I deserved.
Mhm.
And that's still kind of unfolding, the deeper down this rabbit hole I go.
Okay. Give me something, one or two things that you had to unlearn about money. And the reason I'm asking that is that I find that, and I don't think it's just a Black thing, but I know definitely in our community, there are things we're taught, the things you mentioned in the book about, money being the root of all evil, and a lot of things that we get a blueprint, right, early and often about what money, power of money, what it can and can't do, what it means. And then if you're lucky, you get to unlearn some of that, right, and do something else in your life. My question to you is, can you give us one or two things you've had to unlearn about money?
Yeah. I think one of them you already kind of touched on, right? Money is the root of all evil. And
Mhm.
certainly that's not a message that my parents or my grandparents gave me, like, oh, stay away from money. But it is something that's often misquoted in our community. And
Mhm.
so as you start to pursue money making activities, or develop a passion around income, right? There is kind of like this internalized guilt that says, well, the people who have money, the people who have power, the people who have control, those are bad people. And so you don't want to become like that. And it kind of creates a dilemma internally. And I think another one was this idea of like certain things being for Black people and certain things being for white people, right? So like we talk, and I have a relevant non-money example that happened today, right? I was talking with my mom and her fiance about skiing. And I was like, I was invited to a skiing trip, and my response was, that I'm Black, right? And her fiance response was, well, I ski and I'm Black. And I was like, yeah, no, I know that Black people do ski, but it was like, that's not a Black people thing. And I think that same kind of logic follows instances where we're talking about things like life insurance, or when we're talking about things like investing in the stock market.
Mhm.
We're investing in real estate, and that's certainly changing over the last, I want to say, maybe decade or so. I've seen a lot more Black people talk about these behaviors, these asset classes, the pursuit of these asset classes, and so there's a rising interest. But it's really interesting to me as kind of sit back and reflect on it, that we're becoming interested as a whole, right, culturally, in the mainstream, that this is an activity or behavior that's been going on for years and years and years and years.
Okay. Um, excuse me. How can we this is something that I see a lot of, and I know it's something that I see people struggle with. And I had to not do it. And it's the question about how do we prevent lifestyle creep? And let me give you a really quick example. I was doing another interview about a week ago, and I was talking about how for a long time I didn't have any money, right? And then I started making money consistently. So then I was able to make some other decisions. And one of the things I used to have a little sports car. And when you get your car wash, you can go get a car wash for $5. You can wash
Yep.
it for yourself for a couple of quarters. Well, I had this place I used to go every week, and they'd wash it and wax it and put this, the smells, the scents in there. And I'd go out and buy all these guys donuts. So what was once a $5 car wash, now it's $40, right? Because I'm treating everybody like everybody gets a donut. And then my mother said, "You're spending how much washing your car?" And I had to think, oh, well, go wait a minute. And I didn't think about it until I saw my ATM, until I saw my bank statement. So my question to you is, how do we prevent that? How do we prevent lifestyle creep? Because you'll look up and you're doing stuff that you have no business doing.
Yeah, I used to have one answer, and that was really like budget, right? Pay yourself
Mhm.
for budget, make sure that you're conscious of what's coming in and what's going out. But this new answer that I have is um, create more income, right? So
Okay.
if you used to living your life at a certain income level, or you want to take certain luxuries like what you described, um, and that's outside of kind of the scope of what your previous income level was, then find more income. I don't want to oversimplify it because I've been on this empathy and compassion kind of kick lately. And that, there are people who have a hard time figuring out what that looks like, right? What kind of side hustle can they start? What does packaging their knowledge and their skill set look like? But the internet kind of make the internet kind of removes the barrier to entry for a lot of things. And so is that noise kind of taking away from my
No, no, no. I'm just you didn't respond to it, so I'll let it go.
yeah, no, no, no. So I think, figuring out ways to increase your income to monetize your genius is kind of like the language that's being tossed around now, whether that's creating a course or creating a product or creating a service to supplement your lifestyle and whatever that increase looks like. In your example, you're talking about like the car wash and the donuts. How can you replace that $40 with a skill and not feel guilty or feel burdened by enjoying that luxury? As I get deeper into this money space, particularly around financial psychology, again, one of the things that I'm like really fixated on is like this idea of guilt, or financial stress or financial anxiety that comes with even making positive money decisions, right? I'm investing 50, 70% of my income, but I'm not able to do or enjoy the money that I'm making. Why? And then also looking at behaviors like hoarding, right? Financial hoarding is a thing. And that's not something talked about a lot where, because of a previous experience with trauma, people don't feel comfortable spending money on, buying donuts or washing the car because they're like, no, 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 I want to stack as much disposable income as I possibly can so I can put distance between me and that experience. So, I think personal finance is certainly personal, and that the answer is going to look different for different people. But you can go the direction of limiting your expenses through budgeting and paying yourself first, or you can go the direction of increasing your income so that you can enjoy those things without putting yourself outside of where you're used to being.
Okay. Okay. Talk to me about don't give away too much because it's I want people to, we're gonna talk about this. But I was really kind of shocked and blown away about your concept of what credit cards can do and how you can use them, right? Because it kind of flies against everything I've heard probably the last 30 years. I'm like, what?
For
I mean,
sure.
I could see how it would work. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I know I talked about some pretty wild concepts, but it's been a little while since I've gone through the book. So I think I mentioned I put my closing on a credit card when I bought my house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, so going back into that frame of mind, and again talking about financial trauma, when I started to pursue this as a goal, right, home ownership before 30, and previously having lived in an apartment on Section 8, this was a huge paradigm shift for me, right? Going from not believing that this is something that was possible for me at that age to like, okay, I want to do this. And one of the barriers to what success looked like for me was credit. I had not, I didn't know about credit. I didn't know anything about a credit score or a credit report. I didn't have any access to credit cards. And so when I started embarking on the credit journey, And I realized that credit could be used as a tool to invest, using other people's money. I became almost obsessed with this idea of getting access to as much credit as I possibly could. And that access to credit would bail me out in instances of emergency where maybe other people couldn't. And so my logic at the time, and so I'm 25, I'm working at the bank, maybe making $45,000 a year, was okay, I'm getting ready to buy this house, but what if the furnace goes out, or I need to replace the roof, or whatever. And I can't call my uncle and my aunt or my mom and my dad and say, hey, I need $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to bail me out of this situation. What am I going to do? And so I filled that gap and that fear rather by increasing what was available to me by way of credit. I think at the time, I mean, I had to have at least 5 credit cards, um, and all with very healthy limits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I learned about the balance transfers at 0% APR, and I had witnessed some peers of mine taking their debt and moving it, once it started accruing interest, to another non-interest credit card, and really just kind of moving around the debt while you paid it down. And I said, okay, I'm going to use this idea in closing on my house. And that's what I did. I came to the closing table with money that I had taken from a convenience check associated with one of my credit cards at 0% interest for, I think it was like 15 months. And I, bought a cashier's check and used that money instead of the money that was sitting in my 401k, or money that I had saved to cover that closing cost.
Okay. Tell me about, you're talking about 401k. So what's the big controversy you stirred up? I think you put a thread about a 401k on Twitter, and it caused
Yeah,
a hullabaloo. So what?
yeah, and it's funny because right as I'm kind of living these experiences, my mind has changed and changed back and changed again. So the controversy was that I stopped contributing to the 401k. I was like, I'm not more. I'm going to invest 100% of what it is that I would have been investing in my 401k into my Roth IRA. And the reason for that actually came about as I was reading this book, Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony talks about how over the long term, the 401k is actually costing you more money because of the hidden fees associated with like administration and
Mm-hmm.
all of the different fees that were in there. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to lose all my money. So I'm going to take 100% ownership of my investing and invest in these IRAs that are self-directed. But then as I've had kind of time to mature in my understanding of these products and what's available to you, I also realize as an employee benefit that the match is already kind of baked into your compensation. And so by not contributing and taking at least the match, you're losing out on money. And oftentimes it's referred to as free money. So after making the decision to stop contributing to the 401k, I actually went back and started contributing again to at least the match. And when I left the last company that I was working for, well, the last 2 companies that I was working for, I just simply took the money that was in the 401ks and rolled those over into IRAs. So I ended up doing what I said I was going to do anyway in the first place. There was a little bit of an extra there because I was getting those matches.
Okay. 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 Very good. Let's switch gears and talk about something else that's near and dear to my heart that I was happy to hear that you're working on. Your commitment to alleviating, changing, transforming the whole concept of homelessness and
Yeah.
people dealing with that. And I know you have an organization. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization? And if you need any employees because I'd be happy because I did that for a while. I did that. That was my first when I first started doing nonprofit work and social service. I was started off working with the homeless population and was really great at it and loved it. So that's my pitch to get a job. So I'll let you talk about your organization.
Yeah, so I forget what year it was that we started. I think it was 2018. Me and a friend of mine were talking about creating an impact in the world and combining our expertise, if you will. His background is in human services, and my background was in finance. And so we decided to focus on homelessness. And I grew up in New York, so it was kind of like homelessness, like, why homelessness? Not from a place of a lack of compassion, but from a place of being desensitized, right? I had, especially growing up, experiencing aspects of poverty, to kind of look through or look past the homeless person standing there asking for change because, well, I didn't have it to give and I didn't want to be confronted. And like I said earlier, right, we had not as much as other people, but we had more than, certain others. And so it kind of became like a defense mechanism. And when I was having a conversation with my co-founder around homelessness and the spectrum that exists with homelessness, I had to like really re-educate myself and resensitize myself to the mission. And also realizing that most Americans are a paycheck or two away from being homeless. And so, what does homelessness look like on that spectrum, right? Are they military veterans who have had a hard time reentering the civilian world? Are they children who are couch surfing their way through elementary school, middle school, high school, college? Are they people who have mental disabilities and have just, given up, right? Or can't afford the services that they need in order to navigate what those disabilities look like? And then, you have your typical archetype of what a homeless person is and the biases that we learn, right? This person is doing drugs. This person is going to spend their money on alcohol. This person doesn't want to get a job, and realizing that these people are people and that what we see on the outside or what we see on the surface are symptoms of the condition that they're in, right? And it's not who they are. And so we decided we wanted to save the world and started an organization and extended hand. But we realized that was a huge undertaking. And so we started working with a consultant through the SBA that you guys have to niche down and really focus on a particular subset of this very broad goal. And where I'm at in the state of Connecticut, there are a lot of organizations competing for funding for this cause. And because we were new and very inexperienced, we were going to have a very hard time getting funding. So we decided to kind of pivot our focus from holistic ending homelessness to prevention. And that prevention looks like targeting the age range of about 16 to 21 and providing job development services, financial education services, and healthcare advocacy, which we refer to as individualized holistic care. And then the pandemic hit. So we're getting geared up to like roll this out. We had done 2 successful drives, 1 clothing drive, 1 supply drive. And the pandemic hit, so we couldn't do any more outreach work. And what we actually ended up doing was pivoting and starting a for-profit consulting company that would cover those same bases without having to compete with the other nonprofits in the area for resources to address homelessness. So there's been kind of like a lull or a pause in the work that we do. Certainly not forgetting that work. And since then, I have joined a board, board corporator. So I'm actually going to be an incoming board member for an organization that focuses on homelessness in the area that's about 200 years old. So I've been learning a lot about just kind of the governance of the organization, from a nonprofit perspective. What is the need, the services that they provide, and taking that back so that we can kind of revisit and rebrand our organization.
Okay. Sounds good. I like it. Yeah, I was on that website too today looking around and seeing what you guys do. And like I say, it is quite an undertaking. And if you it's very easy to try to do everything in solving it because there's so many parts that you
Yeah.
could attack in terms of like when I was working with that population when I first started doing it in 2011, I was doing a lot of workforce development. Like how do you get people, writing resumes, interviewing, how do you get them in, and these are folks that are living, a lot of my folks were either in shelters, some of them were living in their cars, or sleeping in parks and you don't want to overload people, but it's kind of like, what is the next thing we need to do? What do you need right now? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I just found it extremely fulfilling because you can see the impact you're having.
Yeah.
And I had an experience where that was my situation for a while. I was couch surfing and didn't know that was homelessness. I was like, well, I'm not homeless, until somebody told me, yeah, you are, and then I figured out how to move through all of that. So by the time I started teaching my folks, I knew all the ins and outs of it, right? Like I was like, okay, I know where to get the good food for cheap. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. This is how you show up and get a job, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm very, very fascinated in that and trying to figure out how to get back into it. I am
Can I
going to
think that a lot of the misconceptions around what homelessness look like also act as a barrier to people getting help and people
right.
providing,
Mm-hmm.
because there are people who are employed but homeless, right? There are
Right.
people who have iPhones that are homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I said earlier, there are children who go to school homeless, right? They go to school so they could get a meal and so that they can have kind of a place to be during the day. And so I think if there's anything that I would want somebody to get away from this message is that we need to reimagine what homelessness looks like
Mm-hmm.
and realize how close we all are to homelessness, especially with the different debt crises that we're navigating, whether that's student debt, whether that's consumer debt, whether that's healthcare debt, and that because we place such value on the credit system in giving us access to resources, housing, employment, insurance, etc. It's really barring people access to really just getting basic quality of life um, needs and things kind of like fulfilled. So definitely we need to have more conversations about this and reimagine what homelessness looks like and how close each one of us are to experiencing homelessness.
I agree. I agree. And I had somebody tell me that I had one of my kids. This is a staff member who told me this. She said, "Well, if the perception is homelessness looks like this, right? Whatever it is for any particular person, right? If my perception of homelessness is, oh, the person, like you said, the stinky guy on the streets is begging for change. If that's not who I am, then I won't say, oh, I need support or assistance because that's not what I'm doing, and
Right.
it's really the face of it. And I think you said that in your book. I think the face of it, I think we have to get really comfortable with um knowing that there's a lot of faces for it. It looks very different.
Yeah.
Somebody who has a master's degree who's polished, it's gonna look very different than somebody who dropped out of high school and got a bunch of kids and no money and that type of thing. And you never know, sitting in the room with both of them, that both of them are, homeless, right? Or they both live in a shelter. So yeah, it can be tricky. I think it's important to have a hell of a lot of curiosity, to spend way more time listening than talking, you know, because I've seen people and I've done it. I've seen people, they come in and they want to swoop in with the cape and save people. And people, that's insulting and people don't like it. And they know it, they can tell when you first come in, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
as opposed to saying, can you support me as I move myself out of this situation? Well, all right, Miss, how do you pronounce your last name?
Sabree.
Sabree, okay. I don't know whether it's Sabree or Sabree. Sabree. All right, well, Mr. Sabree, I am going to allow you to have your evening back. I definitely want to have you back on the show. I'm glad that there was such a quick turnaround between the time I responded on Twitter, you said something back, I joined the talk, and now you're here. That wasn't even a month, and I had COVID in this, and I had COVID at the same time.
Yeah.
So anything is possible. Tell folks how they can reach you and promote. If they want to find you, if they want to work with you, if they want to buy your books, if they want to see your TED Talks, tell them how they can find you.
Sure. So everywhere on social media at Rahkim Sabree, no hyphens, underscores, or periods. Um, I have a website that is also my name, rahkimsabree.com. I am the host of a podcast, Overcoming Financial Trauma. That's available everywhere podcasts are listened to, and YouTube. And I have a Substack. So it's a newsletter that I send out every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can subscribe at rahkimsabree.substack.com. And the name of that publication is also Overcoming Financial Trauma.
Okay. Anything else? You want to talk? You want to push your book?
Sure.
You want me to hold it up while you talk about it?
I have so many things that I'm on.
Okay.
That I'm. I have two books, and the book that we've spent a lot of time talking about today is called Financially Irresponsible. That is available on Amazon, and I believe Barnes and Noble as well. Financially Irresponsible by Rahkim Sabree. And yeah, I have a TED Talk. I've been a guest on quite a number of different podcasts, written for a number of different publications. So yeah, if you I think all of that stuff is on my website, and if not, definitely on Google somewhere. So Rahkim Sabree, that's RAHKIM SABREE.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Um, I will definitely keep in contact with you because I definitely want to have you come back for a longer chat at a later date. Look forward to all the wonderful things you're going to do in the world. Keep going. Uh, keep that money going and keep the money tight. Keep putting out your thinking and your information. I will talk with you very soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. Thank you.